Hey, guess what we're talking about on today's show? Super Bowl 54, Kansas City 31, San Francisco 20. We'll talk about the game. We'll talk about the fantasy outlooks for both teams in 2020. Plus, best food we ate, best commercial, what we thought of the halftime show, what we thought of that pass interference call, what we thought about the timeout usage, and the best of the best from Radio Row last week. Good stuff on today's show. Let's get started. It's a good day to be a Kansas City Chiefs fan. It's an even better day to be Heath Cummings. His team just won the Super Bowl. He claims to have predicted the final score exactly, accurately on the Friday preview show. I'm going to have to check on that one. And he got the Kyle Juszczyk prop bets right. And he's taking the day off. You don't even get to hear from him today. Instead, you're stuck with me, Adam Azer, plus Dave Richard and Jamie Eisenberg. Welcome to our Super Bowl 54 recap, 31-20, the final score. The Chiefs are Super Bowl champions for the first time in 50 years. We're going to talk about the game and much, much more. Jamie was at the game. He's probably exhausted, but how was the experience last night, Jamie?
The experience was good. Unlike you, the halftime show was great.
No.
The game was great. You know, it was fun to see how it all unfolded, and you know, I feel bad for the 49ers and their fans, but you know, watching that fourth quarter was fun to see Mahomes and Damien Williams and company, and how they rallied down 10 points. But the atmosphere was fantastic. I thought the crowd was great. It was slightly pro Chiefs, but I think it was, you know, close to 50-50 split, at least at the start of the game. And you know, I've now sat the last 2 years in the auxiliary press box, which you get a real good feel for the crowd and I think a better view. So I thoroughly enjoy it, and I enjoy hearing the fans. But the atmosphere was great. The game was great. You know, and again, just aside from the result for the 49ers fans, I think it was an enjoyable Super Bowl 54 and a great experience. You know, Radio Row was great for us too.
Oh, yeah. Radio Row was a week of just so much fun for us. We're going to talk about that. So today on the show, we're recapping the game. We're going to give fantasy outlooks for both teams in 2020. You know, for example, Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce. That's an interesting question. We'll get into that. We'll do the best of Radio Row. So we went around Radio Row, and we'll talk about this more later in the show if you're interested. It was just a really, really cool week. And there were just so much media there. But we asked writers and football players and some fantasy analysts some very, very important questions like, is Jerry Maguire a sports movie? Do frog and dog rhyme? And how do you rank pancakes, waffles, and French toast? So we'll give you all the answers, the highlights of that coming up later on in the show. Right now, let's talk.
I also have an amazing
football.
Christian McCaffrey story too.
Okay, we'll save that for later. Let's talk football. Dave, I'll start with you. Any major fantasy impact from Super Bowl 54?
No. I mean, maybe it's Damien Williams that gets the credit that we thought about giving him during last offseason, and then when the preseason starts and training camp rolls, people really started to freak out about Damien Williams, and maybe they realized, well, he wouldn't be that guy. And then LaShawn McCoy came in, and everybody just kind of jumped off the Damien Williams bandwagon at that point. But he had a fantastic finish, and if the Chiefs don't make any additions to their run game, I think you could see Damien Williams go right back to where he was, probably closer to before LaShawn McCoy went to Kansas City, which was around 3-ish type of a fantasy pick.
I don't know if I'll get that high, but I see where you're going. It was interesting. I wrote the Damien Williams story for our site after the game.
About how he should have been the MVP?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I kind of got a 50-50 split on the response to that. You saw a lot of players tweeting that they felt he got robbed, you know, of the award. And, you know, I understand some of the sentiment that if you take away the 38-yard touchdown run with a minute left, do his numbers look as appealing? You know, he's the first player in Super Bowl history to ever have 100 yards rushing and a receiving and a rushing score in the same game. One response to saying that, you know, he should have gotten the award over Mahomes was, well, Mahomes led them back. What did Williams do before the score was, or what, you know, when the score was 10-10 or when they were trailing 20-10? Well, Mahomes threw 2 interceptions in that span too. You know, so that's kind of the reason why I think Mahomes loses a little bit in this regard. But look, we know what the award is. It's mostly slated toward quarterbacks, but Williams was fantastic. The cool thing was, Damien Williams spoke to our guys on CBS Sports HQ on the field, Pete Prisco and Danny Cannell. It was a cool interview. But he took a long time to get into the interview room after the Super Bowl. And as a result, I got to ask a lot of his teammates, just about the game, and listen to other people ask about him as well. And the sentiment, what they feel for him, his fullback, Anthony Sherman, just glowing about what he was able to accomplish. The fact that he doesn't, he runs hard, doesn't go out of bounds. I think that kind of ties into his fantasy fortunes in that, he's a guy that sort of runs to contact a little bit, not necessarily a typical Andy Reid type of running back, but he's so good in the passing game. Travis Kelce, he said we just knew we had to feed that man. That's what he said. 2'6" is one of the hardest working guys in the business. Tyreek Hill, he said he's such a difference maker for our offense. It seems as if, they have such a tight-knit unit. The first words out of Tyreek Hill's mouth were, I'd love to keep this team together forever, but that's just not realistic. And we'll see what they do to add to their backfield. On media night, I think we spoke about this during the week last week. I spoke to Mecole Hardman. He talked about, hopefully getting a bigger role. And, the one thing he said was, if 2 years from now, if I'm not making a lot of money, I'm probably going to be out of the league, meaning that he's either going to take a big step forward or he's probably not going to be around. And so we'll see if he's a bigger factor as well. But I do think they'll probably add somebody else just because Williams, in his entire career, has never stayed healthy. And that was my concern last year. He missed 5 games this year. He missed parts of others. But when he's on the field, he's clearly a dynamic force in this offense.
And if you just look at what Andy Reid said about him after the game, it kind of gives you a glimpse into how Reid feels about him. He referred to him as a powerful back for the 3 playoff games. And then he talked about a specific play that Williams had, and it was just power football. So obviously he knows that he's a good pass catcher out of the backfield, but he sees him as a power back as well. And if he's got this track record of injuries, and we know that that's the case, then how can he last a long time as a power back?
One of the props, and Adam, I know you're probably trying to move us along, but one of the props was his receptions for the Super Bowl. And depending on where you got it, 4, I think Dave, you said, is where you saw it.
I could have gotten it at 4.
On the low end, I think it started to creep up almost to 5, 4.5, 5 in some cases. He had 4 targets in the first quarter and could have had a touchdown in the first quarter as well. I think it was first quarter. Mahomes overthrew him. But they made a real big effort to keep him involved. Mahomes getting the ball out quick. And it's just part of the Andy Reid offense, so whoever's back there is going to be probably involved in that regard. And just one note on McCoy. Obviously didn't play, but he says he's not going to retire. Says he would like to eventually retire as an Eagle. That could just be signing a contract for one day and calling it quits. But doubtful he's going to be the guy that's back in there.
Where is he going to go?
I mean, he could be like a Frank Gore and just hangs on and gets the right spot where he gets some touches.
I guess that could be the case. By the way, the receiving yards prop for Damien Williams was 29.5. How many receiving yards did he have? 29.
Yeah, Vegas is smart.
Yeah, they took my money on that one.
Yeah, so I think the encouraging thing here for Damien Williams is that you compare his late season run in 2018, including the playoffs, to his late season run in 2019. There were more carries in 2019. At the end of 2018, it was, I think, a 6-game stretch. Yeah, 6-game stretch where he was just really, really good. But in those 6 games, including the postseason, he had more than 13 carries only one time in those 6 games. If you look at his last 6 healthy games, okay, take away one game where he left with an injury, his last 6 healthy games of the season, including the playoffs, 19 carries, 16 carries, 12, 12, 17, 17. So more of a rushing workload, plus the catches were there. But we'll see. I mean, because they came out in the regular season and they traded for McCoy right before the season started, and Damien Williams had 13 carries in week 1, 9 in week 2. Missed some time, 9, then 1, then 9, then 7. It was very frustrating. He really wasn't very good for fantasy.
Well, they didn't trade for McCoy. They signed McCoy, and that was part of the reason why we were a little concerned, was that they gave him more money in the 1 year than they gave Damien over the 2 years.
Right. So, Jamie, any big fantasy impact from Super Bowl 54 for you?
I think obviously you see that there's a very high ceiling for Deebo Samuel. The fact that they put the ball in his hands in so many different ways, that's encouraging. But the downside of that is what the passing game is for the 49ers, and they need to let Jimmy Garoppolo throw the ball more. It was really strange to see where he was trending end of 2017, beginning of 2018, to the player that we saw this year. Now, there were some times where he cut it loose, and he looked really good when he was doing so. But as we saw down the stretch, whether it was just because the run game was so dominant or in the Super Bowl, it seemed like they were a little bit tentative to have him throw the ball downfield. He had, I don't know this off the top of my head, but he was at one point actually had more air yards than Mahomes in the game. But the two throws that stand out, one was the one at the end of the first half to George Kittle down the field, where Kittle had the unfortunate offensive pass interference call. The second one was at the end of the game where he just missed. I think it was Deebo Samuel on the deep throw. He should have had Emmanuel Sanders for a touchdown. Sanders,
Yeah.
okay. He should have had Sanders on another touchdown as well. But
okay, that's what I meant.
It feels as if they need to open up the offense a little bit more, and maybe that comes with more trust with Deebo Samuel, either bringing back Emmanuel Sanders or finding a better replacement. Obviously, George Kittle's a star, but it can't just be ground and pound all the time, and that tends to. Well, I mean,
they were 8 minutes away from winning the Super Bowl, and I don't know how good he is. Remember I said that I thought this game would sort of be an indication of how we're going to think of Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah,
and I think he's good. I just don't think he's great.
And I was thinking about that the entire fourth quarter after the Chiefs flipped the script and were playing with the lead about what you were talking about. But I think you got to have more balance. I mean, you have to be able to, okay, if we're in this situation, be able to rely on your passing game. And I just don't feel like they did that enough. I'll go back to two things Pete Prisco always says. One is be who you are, and they sort of got away from that a little bit to start the game. They didn't run the ball enough to start the game, I thought, getting away from what their identity is. But the other part about it is throw to score, run to win. And so their run game is so good, you can sort of put teams on their heels a little bit more. Not that it obviously it worked for them. They got to the Super Bowl. The playoff run was fantastic. What they did against Minnesota and Green Bay with their ground game was great. But I think, for what we talk about fantasy-wise, and I think also NFL perspective, is if they could have a little bit more balance, just a little bit more in the passing game, it'd be great for us. It'd be great for Deebo. It would make Kittle that much better, and that's what we saw last year. They had to throw the ball a lot more last year because their defense wasn't as good, and their quarterback situation was different, but Shanahan allowed their quarterbacks to throw more. I'd like to see that for Garoppolo.
And my fantasy takeaway was I'm sitting there, I'm just thinking I might change my mind on Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson, because I have been, even in 6-point per passing touchdown leagues, Lamar Jackson is my number one quarterback. Mahomes is obviously incredible. What he did in the postseason, he had more than 40 points twice. He had 27 fantasy points, and he didn't even play that well for 3/4 of the game. In fact, Troy Aikman called him out, said he was basically having a bad game, not playing well. And
a lot of people thought that maybe he got
hurt,
with the hit in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Right.
And the throw he made to Sammy Watkins late in the game was beautiful. The throw to Tyreek Hill was obviously beautiful. So, what he does, I don't know if it's more sustainable than what Lamar Jackson does, because Lamar Jackson, he had over 1,200 rushing yards this year, and he was on pace. In the 7 starts he made in 2018, he was on pace for almost the exact same amount of yards, over 1,200. And Patrick Mahomes hasn't even been a 300-yard rusher. So I basically did a little math, and I said if Lamar Jackson has about 1,100 more rushing yards than Patrick Mahomes, but Mahomes has 1,500 more. No, okay, sorry. If Lamar Jackson has 1,100 more rushing yards than Mahomes, but Mahomes has 1,500 passing yards than Jackson, well, then Patrick, and this, by the way, based on projections of what they've done, that's kind of realistic. Mahomes would only need 9 more touchdown passes to score more than Jackson in a 6-point per passing touchdown league. So seems like, I feel like I probably would bet on that. I would probably bet on him getting 9 more touchdown passes than Lamar Jackson. And in theory, turnover's not a factor here. That might get Mahomes more fantasy points than Jackson.
Wouldn't it just be awesome if they're both great? I mean, how cool would that be? If we get 2018 Mahomes, 2019 Jackson, and 2020, that would just be amazing.
Well, not if you don't have them, because you're screwed.
Sure.
Everybody else is going to crush you. But yeah, look, obviously Mahomes is great, he's young, and it's fun.
You could have 84 Marino too. We'll throw that in.
Well, we did talk to him. I hope everybody enjoyed that interview. All right, let's do some real quick Super Bowl questions. First of all, how good of a game was that? I did a Twitter poll. How good was that game? Great, very good, solid, or average or below average? What do you think the Twitter folk had to say? What do you think won? Great, very good, solid, or average or below average?
I'll say very good won the poll.
Correct. 43.1% of the vote, followed by solid at 29.6%, followed by great, 21%, and only 6% said average or below average. What would you guys say? Was it great, very good, solid, or average or below average?
It was very good. It was an entertaining Super Bowl.
Yeah, I voted great. I thought the back and forth with the score, was fun. You had some controversy with the lack of timeouts at the end of the first half, mostly by the 49ers. No penalties, I mean, little penalties. That's always a great game. It went by quick. It wasn't bogged down by flags on the field. A lot of people say, which I get, they could have had some holding calls.
Yeah, Niners fans will complain about
on the Chiefs side of that. I get that. That's fair. But the offensive pass interference call, you could debate whether he pushed off or not.
Right.
Most people say he will, but still, it's tough to call that in that spot. In any event, I thought it was for what we've gotten from the Super Bowls over the last few years. I thought it was right up there with some of the best.
Oh, thank you for voting in the poll, by the way. And yeah, it was better than last year. Okay, next question. Well, I'll go to this one since you brought it up. What did you think of the timeout situation at the end of the first half? Do I need to sum it up? I'll sum it up like this. Each team had 3 timeouts left. The Chiefs were about to punt. They had 4th and 13 at their own 49-yard line. Kyle Shanahan could have called his first timeout with about 1 minute and 50 seconds left. He decided to play it conservatively, basically go into the half with his timeouts because he was concerned if they go 3 and out, the Chiefs use all their timeouts, you're giving Mahomes the ball back, possibly at midfield. So I actually thought either decision could have been fine, but I don't picture the 49ers lining up in a 2-minute drill and going down the field. That's just not what they do. So, they sort of did.
If Kittle's catch counts, they're right there for a field goal or potential for touchdown. So they went right down the field.
That would have saved some face for sure if that penalty.
But they did that with no
happen.
timeouts, though. They did that with no time.
That's true. I get what Kyle Shanahan was trying to do.
I thought either decision would have been okay. I was fine with it. What did you think? Should he have called the timeouts?
So the reason why he didn't call a timeout before the punt was because he was worried that the punt could get downed inside the 5. And then if you're downed inside the 5, then the Chiefs are going to use their timeouts while you're trying to run to just get out of the shadow of the end zone. So I get that. But then just that first play where they ran, they were looking for an explosive run. That's what Shanahan said after the game. They got a decent run, and they just let the clock keep ticking. At some point, I would have used one of those 3 timeouts. But it took a while. He ran like 2 plays off before he actually did.
I don't think he did. I think the Chiefs did.
No,
the Chiefs did on 3rd down, and then they got a big play for a first down.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what he did, but he
used the timeout.
He used one in the drive.
He used one after the Chiefs called timeout on 3rd down. Then they converted like a 20-yard play to Jeff Wilson, and then he called timeout, and then you had the Kittle play, which got called back, and then he just took a knee.
That's exactly what happened.
All right,
but
next
like
question.
Hold on. That's 1 minute and 50 seconds that the 49ers potentially could have managed better. And then they got the ball back to start the 3rd quarter, and they ran like 5 minutes worth of plays then. And they only got 3 points. So between both of those times, that's when a team like the Patriots usually scores 2 touchdowns. And that's the difference between champions and not champions.
It doesn't have to be touchdowns. You're just putting points on the board. I mean, you're giving your chance to, it's a different game if it's 23-10 as opposed to 20-10. The more pressure on the Chiefs. And
sure.
I will say this. I thought the 49ers, when they held them to a field goal in the first half, if they would have been down 14-3, I don't know if they would have recovered from that.
All right, next question. Was it pass interference on George Kittle?
It was, but I don't know if you call that.
How often do you see a call like that during the regular season?
15.
Does that matter though? If it was pass interference, you call it. You call it.
But we see receivers push off all the time, and there's no flag. I thought it was a.
I don't think it was so.
Time.
I don't. They're hand fighting. I don't think it was so blatant that he. That's what made the play.
Fair.
Okay. Best commercial, Jamie. I know you can't answer that.
My favorite of the ones that I saw was the Bill Murray one, the Groundhog Day. I mean, that was great.
That was great.
Yeah.
The
fact that they got Ned Ryerson in it was awesome.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Cheetos for me with the MC Hammer with it Can't Touch This was great too. But I didn't really pay that much attention. Best food you ate last night?
I had a boxed peanut butter and jelly sandwich for the auxiliary meeting.
Oh no,
that was great.
My wife makes a killer spinach and artichoke dip. And we got wings, so I'm fat, and I dipped the wings into the spinach and artichoke dip.
That's good.
It was really, really good.
Ooh,
I had a good spinach and artichoke dip at Yard House before I left for the stadium.
We all had spinach and artichoke dip yesterday. The best thing I ate was the cookie cake.
Mm-hmm.
What?
No,
Yeah,
go
the
ahead,
cookie
finish.
cake,
I got
yeah.
a good story for you.
Yeah, the cookie cake was very funny. It was so generic. It just had "the big game" written on it in icing. I was like, oh,
You
wow,
should have
they
had
really went all out for that.
special event
Special event.
54 on the cookie cake.
Dave,
Yes.
when you have people over to your house,
Yeah.
and it's a
Boy.
planned
Oh,
situation,
come on.
Okay.
how early do you extend the invitation for people to come over? For the most part.
Oh, I mean, it could be as soon as a couple of hours or a couple of days.
Okay, most people do a couple days.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, to be courteous, right? To
Yeah.
especially the people we
What are
care
you
about.
doing this weekend? Nothing? You want to come hang out?
So, as most people who listen to us are aware, we have a former colleague who's friends with all of us, but lives within proximity of our esteemed host here, Adam Mazer. This person may have introduced Adam to his wife. I don't know. Their wives may be best friends since college. Yeah, he invited Nando to his. He didn't invite Nando. His wife.
Yes, I did. No, I did.
Okay, maybe you
I
did.
did.
So he invited Nando, who has a how old is his daughter now? Almost 2?
Yeah.
No, almost 1.
No,
Yeah.
like 15 months.
Right.
Like 15 months.
Somewhere between 1 and
16 months.
Right.
Hey, would you believe Azer just invited me to his party just today? He was not happy
Yeah,
with you.
look, we settled on having a party on Saturday. I invited him on Sunday morning.
No. You told us you were having a Super Bowl party last week.
Oh, then it was Friday.
No,
Like,
I didn't go to lunch with you Friday.
Yes.
You told me Thursday.
Crap. All right. Well, it was only my wife's family, and then it was. Okay, so anyway, best food I ate was cookie cake, and how did you do with prop bets and DFS? I was terrible with my prop bets. I did not expect a huge game from Damien Williams. I thought the tight ends would have better games, so I didn't make them, thankfully. But prop bets, DFS, how'd you guys do?
I did not partake in any DFS, and I lost 1 unit in prop bets. Each unit for me is $1. I lost $1.
I did go with DFS. I did not make any prop bets.
Okay, the funny prop bets, the Mahomes rushing yards thing was crazy because he lost 15 yards.
That
on
was
3 kneel
ridiculous.
downs. Yes,
I thought that was like
and he went
a
under.
football faux pas to do something like that when you're taking a kneel down. Like Greg Schiano
He was trying to
would
run
have
the clock
told his
out.
guys to beat him up and get a flag if that happened.
It worked out because it basically timed it perfectly to be able to run out the
just
clock
chuck
with
the
that
ball
long pass.
away.
But
Right. At the very
everybody
end
was
of the
taking
game.
the over on that and on his rushing yards, which was around 30. Depending on where you got it. And
I saw one
he
two
went
of the
way
guys,
over.
2 of the guys I was sitting next to, one got it at 30, one got it at 35.
Yeah, he went over both of those until the kneel downs, and he ended up with less than 30.
Yep.
So that was crazy. And then we were in the car. Radio Row was really far away from where Dave and Heath and I lived, or my parents lived, and I was staying. So we had long car rides every day in a ton of traffic, and we were talking about prop bets, and one that came up was Deebo was over-under on players who would throw a pass in the game was 2.5. And I think we said we would take the over, and Deebo Samuel was going to throw. Remember?
Yep.
He had the ball. He was going to throw. He was looking, and then he ran. And I don't
Smart
think anyone
play.
else other than
Yep.
the quarterbacks threw. Yeah, so that went under. All right. So a couple notes from Ben Schrager. Jimmy Garoppolo.
What about your terrible halftime take?
Oh, I forgot to ask about what you thought about halftime. I thought it was awful. I thought
What's
it was really,
wrong with you?
Look, I kind of knew I wasn't going to like it because I thought, honestly, like those 2 artists, they're not relevant. I don't like any of
They're
their
not
songs.
relevant.
They're-
What?
When was the last time they did anything in pop culture? I mean, like whenever was so long ago. Jenny from the Block was so long ago. These are not like I just I don't care for their music, and it was just like sexy dancing. What is that?
Oh,
What
who
is
wants
that?
to see that, right? That's terrible. But it was also like
It was extremely entertaining.
I thought it was a very entertaining halftime.
It was well done.
I don't care that Shakira and J-Lo don't have a new album out that they're promoting. They put on a hell of a show. The choreography was amazing. I didn't know half the songs that were on there. I still enjoyed it. I'm sorry
Glad
that
you
this
enjoyed
couldn't be a Bryan Adams acoustic solo act at halftime.
Wait, he's relevant though. He's relevant.
Yeah, right. He's relevant. He's relevant in
He's
Adams'
got better
world.
songs than them. Hey, I mean, if you're going to get people who aren't current, they should be legendary, like U2 when they did the halftime show, or Prince. I'm sorry. Lady Gaga doesn't have to be relevant. She's like legendary even at her young age.
And those two aren't
Shakira
legendary?
And J-Lo to me? No, to me they're not. They're not.
I think J-Lo is legendary in terms of just like
as an
all
entertainer.
forms of entertainment.
Yeah, she's an entertainer.
Yes, like we don't know her
I
just
agree.
for her singing. She's also proven to be an accomplished actress, and she does.
And
so much
I would
more
say
than that.
Shakira is a legendary performer because she does things obviously in different languages that make her legendary to different sections of the world. But
Yeah.
All right.
I
Well, that's
thought
fair.
it encaptured Miami and South Florida
Yeah.
very, very well. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I guess I just
You're wrong.
didn't really care about that. Okay. All right, Ben Schrager gave me a couple notes. Jimmy Garoppolo was 1 for 9 for 20 yards and 2 interceptions when he was pressured. He did not complete
Yep.
a pass over 20 yards. And
And
they
a lot of that
dialed
came
up
in the fourth.
blitzes.
Yeah.
Right. I'll give you an
I want to see what they're going to do
ESPN note
to
real
either
quick.
bring back Emmanuel Sanders or replace him. Is it going to be a rookie? Is it going to be maybe Dante Pettis gets another shot? What's the plan to upgrade this receiving core? Because Sanders is a fine number 2. I think if they did throw the ball more, we'd see more production from him. We saw it, in 2 of the 3 games that Garoppolo let it loose. He was productive in those 2 games. So that's one that I want to see what that spot's going to be. And I think that'll be interesting to see what Emmanuel Sanders does. Does he want to try and get back with the 49ers and see if they can make another run because they're certainly poised to do so? Or does he just chase dollars and try to get one more last payday?
By the way, everything that you just talked about, we're having totally different conversations on today if Garoppolo hits Sanders for that deep ball inside of 2 minutes. He was off by like 3 or 4 yards. It was a bad overthrow. But if he hits him there, we're talking about Garoppolo winning, theoretically winning the Super Bowl, being the
he's the
MVP.
MVP.
Where do you draft him in fantasy next year? Is he a potential starter? Is Emmanuel Sanders going to stay?
Right, no,
even if he doesn't, he cashes in somewhere else. Like that's how close things were in this game, and how they are in pretty much every game.
He's potentially over 300 yards or right around 300 yards, or 280. At least that would have been a prop bet that he would have hit, and it would have been 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Because take away the last one at the end.
It changes so much if he just makes that one throw. If he makes that throw,
he also had Sanders, and this was the other player I was referring to. Where it looked like he got held. It was looked like some sort of a post route. And Shanahan went nuts. Like he thought he was. He thought he was held. And it's hard to really see like where Sanders came out of his break and where the contact was, if it was in 5 yards or not. But that's another play that Garoppolo missed. He had some nice throws, and
he had
some good play design. The Jeff Wilson play you referenced at the end of the half, that was a brilliant play call. But there were just some tough things from Garoppolo.
Yeah, the stat I wanted to give from ESPN, from Nick Wagner of ESPN, the Chiefs blitzed on 54% of Jimmy Garoppolo's dropbacks, their highest blitz rate since 2011 against Tim Tebow. So how about that? Spags with a good job there, a good game plan. I guess at least at the end, they really dialed it up.
Frank Clark said after the game that if they held him to around 200 yards, they felt they were going to win because they didn't think that they were going to have the same success running, and they wanted to make him throw. So they said if he can get above 200 yards, they feel like they're going to be in a good spot. And, that's essentially what happened. The run game, despite the fact that they had a 10-point lead, just wasn't there. The fact that Damien Williams outrushed both Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman by himself. That speaks sort of volumes to how this game unfolded. For the Chiefs defense, it's going to be interesting. Chris Jones after the game, we coming back. We're going to win this again next year. We're going to repeat. He's a free agent. That's a big key to that defense and what the Chiefs defense can look like next year. A lot of good players there that finally clicked at the end of the season, as we saw. It was essentially that Titans game in Week 10. They changed and they flipped things. The run defense specifically, but as a whole, and we'll see. Rashad Breeland played an amazing game. He had the interception, had a big tackle in the first half. He did a really nice job in that game too. But, again, I still think that they were challenged very much. It's something that I'd like to see more from that 49ers passing attack, and, could have been a little bit different with this game.
And the other note from Ben Schrager, Damien Williams is the first player in Super Bowl history with 100-plus rush yards and a receiving touchdown. And based on what I heard earlier, I think all 3 of us feel like he should have won MVP. Jamie said that. I think Dave agreed, and I don't
agree,
as well.
but I understand
Mahomes?
the case for it. Yeah, Mahomes
Okay.
was a bigger part of it for Kansas City.
All right, a few things I want to talk about real quick, and then we'll answer some fantasy questions about the Chiefs and the 49ers. All right, first of all, it's fantasy baseball season now, okay? Football's over, but we're not going anywhere. We still have 3 shows per week, but fantasy baseball, we're kicking it into high gear, 5 shows per week beginning either this week or next week. We'll either have 4 or 5 this week, and then we'll have 5 next week, and the position previews are coming out probably next week as well. So please listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast and all of our shows on cbssports.com/podcasts, or just search wherever you listen to your shows. If you're sending us an email, by the way, I'm not going to be on a lot of the football shows for the next couple of weeks because I need to focus on baseball right now. I'm way behind, so I won't be on much, probably 1 a week. So if you don't like me, this is going to be a great couple of weeks for you. Now, if you want to email our show, email us at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com and please put something like fantasy football in the subject line. Because right now I'm getting so many baseball emails, and I don't want to lose your football emails in that mess. So please just put something in there to indicate that it's a football email. And our newsletter, cbssports.com/newsletter. Go there to stay up to date with fantasy football content all off season long. News of the day, podcast content, editorial pieces, prospect profiles, rankings, and more. That's cbssports.com/newsletter. See if there's anything else I wanted to give statistically. The Niners gained 59 yards on their last 4 possessions.
That's
that
not good.
Was not very good. No. Okay, so let's get into the questions for Kansas City and for San Francisco. Before we do that, Dave Richard,
Yes.
tell us about our newest sponsor, Coors Light.
The newest sponsor for the FFT podcast is Coors Light, and I just let me just set this scene for you. Okay, it's the week between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl, and I just come back from Mobile from the Senior Bowl. I know I've got this busy week ahead with the Super Bowl coming. I've got a lot of work headed my way. I'm out to lunch with my wife, and I just need to chill. And that's why Coors Light is the one I choose when I need a moment of chill. I enjoyed a cold, smooth beer that didn't have that gross aftertaste. Coors Light just hit the spot. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing with a bunch of random ingredients in it. Just a perfect Coors Light to put a pause on my busy schedule and refresh myself, get myself ready for the big week ahead. So when you want to reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. It's Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment, and it's made to chill. Coors Light. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Yes, thank you, Dave, and thank you, Coors Light, for becoming our newest sponsor. Dave actually texted me. We were talking about the sponsorship a few weeks ago. He texted me. He's like, hey, damn, I love that beer, and actually heard that spiel about being out to lunch with his wife and drinking the Coors Light.
It's a
I'm
true
glad
story.
Our listeners got to enjoy that. Yeah, so thank you very much, Coors Light, for hopping on. All right, so Kansas City questions: Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson?
I've gone back and forth since the end of the season. Right now, I feel like Mahomes, just because of what happens to the number 1 quarterback. They always seem to struggle after finishing number 1 the year before. There's just not a lot of repeat performances in that regard. So I'll probably flip-flop 10 more times before we get to August. But right now, Mahomes. Probably just a little recency bias.
I've got Mahomes in there too. I had it before the Super Bowl. I'm already starting to like his schedule for next year because not only does he play the teams in the West, he's got AFC East. There's a couple of weak defenses in there. And the NFC South, I'm looking at those defenses, and I don't think they're going to be able to hold him down. I'm not sure what defense is really going to be able to hold down Patrick Mahomes.
This is the worst he's played. This is the worst that you'll get. If you're talking 286, 2-2 with 29 rushing yards on top of that and 3 total touchdowns, you'll take it.
Yeah, and look at what he did at the beginning of the 2019 season, 3 straight games with huge numbers. Lamar did it for a whole year, and I totally get that, but I wonder if there's going to be, ways that teams prepare for Lamar Jackson. I think Jackson will end up having a tougher schedule than Mahomes, and defenses are going to be more up to slowing them down.
Yeah,
now,
even if it's just those 2 games against Pittsburgh.
I also think that there's a chance that Baltimore adds something to their passing game, and if that happens, then there's going to be a switch there too. So there's a lot of moving parts between these 2 quarterbacks, but for now, I agree with you. I think Mahomes is the safer of the 2, but I wouldn't mind having either one.
When are you drafting Damien Williams?
Round 3 to 4-ish.
Maybe 3 in PPR, but not before round 3 in non-PPR. It's just he can't stay healthy. It's just something that's
and you know that there's going to be something added there, right? So maybe round 4 at the earliest is what I should say.
This is 2014, so this is 6 years in the league. and he's never played 16 games, especially as a starter.
And this was his first season with more than 50 carries. So, yeah, he just doesn't have that workload. Would you take – let me just look up our latest mock draft to see where he went. Damien Williams or Devin Singletary?
Singletary
Right now.
Snap call.
Okay. Is Darwin Thompson worth drafting? Jamie, I think we talked about him being a potential sleeper a couple weeks ago.
No, last week when I spoke to him on media night. Yeah, absolutely. If he's the second guy on the depth chart, then for sure. If you're looking at Williams missed 5 games and parts of others, if they don't bring anybody in significantly, now they can draft somebody late. They did it with Thompson last year. It was a 6th-round pick out of Utah State, and he's not the biggest guy. I felt bad for him because when Williams had the run to set up the first touchdown and his helmet popped off, Thompson came in, and I was like, oh, wow, he's going to get a touchdown.
Yeah, you're right. He got that shot.
That's probably a feel-good moment for a rookie in that spot, and he got stuffed, and then Mahomes ran it in. So, but if he's the number 2 running back there, then he's going to be very very appealing for a lot of reasons.
And you'll love the idea of drafting him if you take Damien Williams first on draft day. And I rushed into Darwin Thompson a little too much. We still had him as a second half of the draft type of pick this past year, but it was pretty clear that he needs a little bit more time to mature and be a better football player. And hopefully this offseason, that's what he does.
Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce? Who do you draft first?
Kelce.
Who did you draft first this past year?
Hill. But,
they were right
in the suspension.
Right.
Before the suspension scenario, it was Hill for me.
I think it was Hill for me too, but they were both right in that range between 10 and 15 overall where I would have taken them. I wouldn't have minded starting my team with Kelce and Hill.
Yeah, I mean, Hill's really interesting because he's not, I think I might take Hill ahead of Kelce in non-PPR. But in PPR, he's worse than a lot of wide receivers because he's probably going to be about an 85 catch guy, which isn't great. But since he gets 15 yards per catch or more, he's probably going to be a 1,300-yard guy receiving-wise, which is really good, which in 3 of the last 4 years, there have only been 3 or 4 wide receivers who have had 1,300 receiving yards. And he's probably going to catch 10 or more touchdowns based on 16 games last year and his 16-game pace this season, if you take out week 1 when he only played 12 snaps.
Those are really good numbers. And he had the other injury too, which sort of hurt him, and who knows how healthy he was when he first came back from the shoulder injury. The numbers were there in those first couple of games, but you just don't know where he was physically and everything, and that may have led to some of the lack of elite production. But if you're getting 2018 Tyreek Hill, you're taking him, maybe in the first 10 picks.
Yeah, I'll just give one last thing on Hill. So in 2018, he was the number 1 wide receiver in non-PPR, number 3 in PPR. In 2019, I'm taking away the Jacksonville game he barely played. If I look at the other games, his per game numbers based on his healthy games, he was the number 5 wide receiver in non-PPR, number 8 in PPR. So that's just some numbers there.
It's a pretty good. It's a pretty good body of work.
Sorry,
it's pretty good body of work. So you know what you're getting. And again, this is a receiving core that's going to be a little bit in flux. Does Sammy Watkins come back? As we saw in the postseason, Sammy Watkins was great. 3 straight solid games. Not dynamic ones. The last 2 were very good, but the one against the Texans where he just had the 2 catches for over 70 yards, that's not great. But if you're getting those 3 games worth of production consistently, that'd be a nice receiver to have. But how much more does Mecole Hardman take over? How much more does they, or do they bring in somebody else with Demarcus Robinson, a free agent? His $14 million price tag is hard to justify. Now, Tyreek Hill said after the game, we've gotten in the playoffs the Buffalo Sammy Watkins, and that receiver was pretty special when he was on the field. So it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of build around or keep the same at that position.
Okay, and then I guess if you want to answer one more question, it's Sammy Watkins. Do you still think he can be – I don't know if he could be great, because at times he's been really great in his career, but could he be a number 2 wide receiver depending on where he ends up? A number 2 fantasy wide receiver, top 24 guy.
I would have a hard time taking him as a –
I wouldn't draft him as a number 2 guy, but I think, he'll be in that number 3, number 4 receiver range for a lot of people. If he's with the Chiefs, I think that's the case. If he goes someplace else, that's going to be the determining factor. But this is now 3 years of Sean McVay, Andy Reid, and he's been good at times. A couple times he's been great. But for the most part, it's just been tough to trust, whether due to injury or and he talked about this. He said, I've struggled with injuries. I've been labeled a bust. Now I'm a Super Bowl champion. And, his big play came against Richard Sherman. That was a nice move that he made to get open. And the throw obviously was brilliant. But you just don't see it enough consistently. And this year was probably the most frustrating of the post-Buffalo tenure, because with Tyreek Hill missing those 4 games, and after that big game in week 1, you thought, wow, this is such an amazing opportunity for him. Maybe things have clicked. He stayed healthy really for the majority of the season. And it just was disappointment after disappointment. A lot of it was the lack of the touchdowns, but he's just not been consistent enough for what his talent level is and in the opportunities he's been given to play with Jared Goff when he was coming up, and McVay and Mahomes when he was the MVP, and just not producing week in, week out.
He has 4 games with 14 or more PPR points in his last 2 seasons. 24 games.
Wow. Okay. So let's go to our San Francisco questions here. Should Jimmy Garoppolo be drafted in a 1 QB league?
No. And
Okay, next question.
Even if he had connected with Emmanuel Sanders on that big score, I don't think I would change my answer.
And I don't think it's just a 12-team league. I don't think it's a 14-team league. I don't think it's a 16-team league. There's just so many good quarterbacks.
Yeah.
It's just not – he's not at that point right now where you're drafting him to be your guy.
Joe Burrow or Jimmy Garoppolo?
Burrow.
I agree. I'm taking Burrow.
Yeah. The only case for Garoppolo is that Shanahan's amazing, and Garoppolo's yards per attempt is going to be very high. And so almost certainly. And if he throws more, maybe he could turn that into something.
I'd love for that to be wrong. I'd love for him to be a starter for fantasy, because I think he can be. But just, what we've seen this year does not make you feel comfortable enough to put him in that category.
Next question. Do you want a San Francisco running back?
At the right spot on draft day, sure. I wouldn't want to reach for Mostert. I'm certain that whether Coleman stays or goes, because he could be a cap casualty, whether they keep Breida, it's not that big of a cap hit if they keep him. So I agree with you, but the potential is there. I don't know what they really think of Tevin Coleman at this point.
I think they think very highly of him. The fact that Mostert just came off a 200-yard performance and 4 touchdowns, and Coleman got the first carry.
Yeah, but Mostert almost never got the first.
But that's
carry.
the point.
Breida had the first snap 2 games ago.
But that's the point, is that Coleman was the guy. The first playoff game, they gave him 22 carries after Mostert had been so successful for them down the stretch. Adams references it all the time. His yards per attempt has been fantastic. It's just they do not seem to say, Raheem Mostert, you're our guy. We're going to lean on you. You're going to carry us to success.
Right.
Until the guy who they seem to want to favor got hurt and had to leave the game on a cart. So I think if it comes back the same scenario this year, we talked about this, coming off the playoff game last year, talking about it last week. If I can get Tevin Coleman cheap, I'm going to get Tevin Coleman cheap. Just like you said, it comes down to value. I'm not going to reach for Raheem Mostert if I have to reach for him. If he falls, I'll take him at the right price.
Where is that spot for Mostert? Is that round 7?
I think he's gone by then, if it's just these 2.
I think he is too. But that's where I would want to get him. But
he went in round 7 in our PPR draft. In non-PPR, he'll go earlier than that. But he went
we
round
also
7.
we also did that draft before the 2 playoff games.
Right.
Yeah, but Coleman had 5 carries yesterday, so I know he got 3 on the first drive. He got 2 the rest of the game. So I don't want to make it sound like they were really leaning on Tevin Coleman. They obviously gave Mostert a lot more work.
Yeah, I was watching when Mostert was coming in, and it was obvious rushing downs. He had the 1 catch in the game, which I think it was in the first half.
Yeah.
And so the prop was 2 catches, and I was like, because I kept telling people take the under on that, because he just never catches the ball. And that's what I think hurts his fantasy value, is that he's not involved in the passing game. But Coleman, I still think is just in the way, and that's the problem for Raheem Mostert. He's the guy that Kyle Shanahan has the rapport with, and maybe that changes in the offseason. Maybe it's like, okay, I got to reevaluate, and Raheem Mostert was so good for us. And, after what they did to the Packers, maybe Shanahan takes a deeper dive into this game in particular and says, maybe if we gave Raheem Mostert 20 carries again, the score is different when we're up 20-10. I don't know, but I like Mostert better. I just don't think Coleman's
Right.
going to be out of the way enough that makes Mostert a great fantasy option.
And I think if the 49ers can improve on Coleman, they have the option to. We just don't know what's going to be out there and who they like. And this is a pretty decent group of draft running backs in the draft that can be complementary running backs, not lead guys. Those are the types of guys that the 49ers like to find.
I don't think that's a route that they go because I think they really like Jeff Wilson. I just don't know that
he could end up taking Coleman's spot.
I don't think he takes the spot, but I think he takes the Breida McKinnon roster spot. Because
they still have McKinnon too. That would be a surprise if McKinnon ended up being
but Breida's a restricted free agent. We'll see what happens there. So I think it's going to be still a tandem committee, however you want to view it. With the two guys at the top being the two guys who played the most in the Super Bowl of Coleman and Mostert, and then we'll see who the third guy is because that's going to be really an interesting position.
Okay, Mostert, last 5 games of the regular season, he was a top 10 running back, 8th in non-PPR, 10th in PPR, and he did that with the 20th most rush attempts and with 6 catches. So obviously he has to be incredibly efficient. He averaged 5.9 yards per carry, and he scored 7 touchdowns in those 5 games, 6 on the ground. But, it's just you can't really rely on that type of efficiency. We need more touches. Next question for the 49ers. Deebo Samuel, the young up-and-comer, or A.J. Green, the old guy who's always hurt? Who would you rather have next year?
Is A.J. Green with the Bengals?
Yes.
I don't know if I mind A.J. Green with the Bengals.
No, that's what I'm asking. Because if he's, I don't know, Tampa Bay with
well, that would be good.
That'd be bad.
Oh, if he's the third receiver.
Yeah, if he's in Tampa Bay with Phillip Rivers, I hate that. You know what I'm saying? So, or New England with Jarrett Stidham. You know what I mean? There are a few scenarios at play here where A.J. Green can get worse. I probably still take A.J. Green, but it's close.
I think I have Deebo higher, but it's just because I'm kind of gaga for him. So I'm not sure if I would keep that. I agree it's close.
And when do you draft George Kittle? I think you're going to say round 2, but give me a little bit more specifics there.
I would
round
go
15.
Yes. Just tell everybody else in your league not to take him. It's toward the end of round 2, beginning of round 3.
Okay. So
basically where I was drafting him this past year.
Chris Godwin or George Kittle?
Godwin.
Cool. Okay, Radio Row was really fun. We're going to tell you about it. We're going to take a quick break. Ben Schrager's going to join us here. This next portion is probably going to be audio only, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can check out the full show, Fantasy Football Today, download the podcast, or maybe we'll put this audio portion on the video. I don't know. But our video, you're not going to see us anymore. But thanks a lot to our video crew today. And let's talk about sports movies and Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes to start your franchise and more from an awesome, awesome week at Radio Row right after this.